And welcome to Hannity. All right, Democrats, they want this to be January 6th week, but they will not give you the full story. And by the way, there is a lot of context, a lot of texture, a lot of things they will not be telling you about. And tonight we're going to give you the vital information about what really happened on January 6th, what happened on January 4th. We'll tell you why the Democrats are not serious about preventing something like this from ever happening again, just like they ignored the riots in 2020. They're mostly peaceful. Oh, okay. Tell that to the thousands of injured cops, the dozens of dead Americans, and the billions in property damage that people suffered. Democrats will purposefully omit details about what happened on the 6th and before the 6th, but we will give you those details that you likely never heard before, and we have special guests that will confirm all of this for you, people involved in all of this. But first, Joe Biden is finally back from the beach. Wow, and he is seething with rage tonight, not because of record-high gas prices, which have now more than doubled in just 18 months under his watch. He's not seething because the American people are suffering from backbreaking of, 42-year record high of inflation and looming stagflation and a looming recession. Not because the border crisis, which is getting worse every day. Oh, and by the way, as we speak, the biggest caravan to date is now approaching our southern border. So buckle up. And let's not forget that Joe has simply turned the page on our fellow Americans trapped in Afghanistan. We'll hit the number 300 this week. If you're counting like we are, it is day 296 since Joe abandoned our fellow Americans behind enemy lines and even confirmed, 2 weeks ago by winking Tony Blinken. Now, sadly, as we speak, Joe Biden is seemingly unconcerned with any of these serious crises, and he's doing nothing to resolve any of them. Instead, Biden is now throwing a pity party for himself because he's polling lower than Donald Trump, and many are now beginning to compare him to Jimmy Carter or even worse. Now, with the midterms now fast approaching, Democrats have absolutely nothing constructive to run on, nothing. Their president, their policies, their radical Green New Deal agenda, all are massive failures. So Democrats, they are employing what is a desperate, multi-pronged political strategy for the upcoming election. January 6th is a part of it. But first, they're planning to scare you, the voters, with a heavy dose of hysteria surrounding abortion. Now, if Roe v. Wade is ultimately overturned by the Supreme Court, we have every indication that will happen. Democrats will go out there and campaign that a woman's right to choose has been abolished in America, abortions are illegal, and Republicans aren't to blame. They will evoke coat hangers and back alley abortions. They will predict widespread suffering and despair for women. They will claim that America, as we now know it, is over. None of that will be true. Abortion is not an enumerated right in our Constitution, but if Roe is overturned, as it appears it may be, it will be regulated by individual states per the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. In other words, almost all U.S. states will continue to allow abortion, with very liberal states like California, et cetera, likely allowing abortion up until the moment of birth, which we would call in this program infanticide. Now, the second prong of the Democratic election strategy for the midterms, well, that surrounds guns and the Second Amendment. As we speak, Democrats are vilifying law-abiding gun owners. They're after gun manufacturers. They're after the NRA. They're vowing to restrict your Second Amendment rights. This, too, as a strategy, I predict will fail. And don't forget, according to the CDC, there are up to 2.5 million defensive gun uses each year. In other words, they save lives. For example, over the weekend, a West Virginia woman heroically shot and killed a gunman who was firing into a graduation party at an apartment complex, and she is now being credited with saving perhaps 20 to 30 lives. But, of course, the media mob, the Democrats, they'll never talk about or report that incident. If Democrats get their way, only the criminals who don't care about laws will have access to the firearms, and we will all be defenseless. Ultimately, the fear-mongering surrounding guns is little more than a political ploy. And when you have nothing else to talk about in a midterm election year and all your policies have failed, well, I guess, it's a Hail Mary for them. Now, if Democrats really cared about gun control, they would call on the president's own son. Yeah, Hunter Biden to be prosecuted. Hunter reportedly lied on his background check about his rampant drug use in order to purchase a firearm. That would be a felony. Then get this, Hunter's gun was eventually thrown away in a grocery store dumpster across from a high school for reasons nobody seems to know. And now we have pictures that have surfaced today showing Hunter waving around a semi-automatic handgun while naked, according to the New York Post. They're saying possibly with a hooker. We can't confirm that part, but just imagine if his last name was Hunter Trump, what the reaction in the media and what the reaction from the Democrats would be. But the Bidens want to lecture us on responsible gun ownership. Does that look like responsible gun ownership to you, Joe? Should your son go to jail? Or maybe I'll say it in a way that you'll understand. For God's sakes, Joe, can't you do something about your own son? And this brings us now to the third prong of the Democrats' election strategy, which, as you can probably guess, is January 6, 2021. Now, they have this big hearing set for Thursday. You will not hear the real story of January 6th anywhere, I don't think, except here. And you definitely won't hear it from House Democrats or the two Republicans that are really Democrats on the committee. Because remember, they kicked off Jim Jordan and Jim Banks. They would have asked questions like we have been asking, and they would have gotten to the truth. But without a doubt, their conduct surrounding that fateful day is not, this is pure political theater. And right on cue, this Thursday night, the sham January 6th committee will be holding their big primetime show hearing, a full-on Hollywood multimedia extravaganza with, of course, Hollywood creative license to embellish, omit as desired. And they've even procured professional fake news production help from a former ABC executive of, Good Morning America and Nightline. They've gone all out for this. And it turns out this is the same executive who reportedly spiked the ABC News report that would have exposed Jeffrey Epstein many years ago. We'll have more on that later in the program. Now, this upcoming hearing on Thursday aims to do one thing, and that is excite the Democratic base, vilify Donald Trump and all of his supporters yet again. In other words, it's like a third impeachment. And just last week, Trump advisor Peter Navarro, he was thrown in handcuffs and leg shackles at an airport for refusing to participate in the sham hearing. He was allegedly thrown in the same jail cell used for Reagan's assassin, John Hinckley. Now, this after being charged with 2 misdemeanor process crimes for not cooperating with House Democrats. Navarro would have gladly, and this is the normal course of business for something not that serious, they would have called his lawyer, say, turn yourself in at this location at 8 a.m., and he would have done it easily, posted bail, as is customary with minor offenses such as the one he's being charged with. But he was never given that opportunity. Instead, Democrats use law enforcement as a political weapon to intimidate and embarrass Navarro, like they did with Manafort and Roger Stone and George Papadopoulos and so many others. Now, there's no respect for our federal government, or no aspect of it, that Democrats will not weaponize. Now, this upcoming made-for-TV, fully produced congressional hearing is no exception. This is where it gets interesting. Despite all the hysteria, the truth is clear, and if the committee had any real intention of getting to the truth and preventing this from ever happening again, which should be their goal. I condemned this in real time on my radio show. We condemned it right here on this program that night, like we condemned all the riots in the summer of 2020 that were not mostly peaceful. Now, they would not be turning to this into another hoax impeachment. Of course, they've had a predetermined outcome, sadly, from the beginning. Knowing the dangers associated with large protests, it turns out that Donald Trump approved up to 20,000 National Guard troops that would bolster the Capitol well in advance of the rally on January 6th. He did it on January 4th. My prediction is that they will lie by omission. The committee will keep that critical fact out of the circus presentation that they, are creating as we speak, their Hollywood show that they're going to put on. They won't focus on, once the president, as required by law, signed off on up to 20,000 troops being called up. That was his role. Then the jurisdiction went to Nancy Pelosi, who's in charge of security for the House, along with the Sergeant of Arms, and the D.C. Mayor Bowser, who refused to call up the Guard, again, That is their call as required by law. Donald Trump did his part. And if Donald Trump really wanted this breach of the Capitol, why would he have authorized up to 20,000 National Guard troops? Now, there are multiple documents and statements to back all of this up, and the January 6th committee has all of this, but they won't be including it on Thursday. By the way, that would include this letter from Mayor Bowser declining National Guard support prior to January 6th. These documents from a recent Inspector General's report that details how Trump's Department of Defense planned for January 6th, and they planned appropriately. And they responded for calls for assistance appropriately. And they did not delay or obstruct the response to the January 6th riot. Now, we also reached out to Biden's defense secretary, Mark Milley. He was in a high-level role at the DOD during January 6th. He's yet to provide us with a comment. They said they wouldn't get back to us tonight. Hopefully, we will be able to report tomorrow what their answer is. But don't forget, right here on this program, the DOD Chief of Staff, Department of Defense Chief of Staff Kash Patel, along with the Acting Department of Defense Secretary Chris Miller, they will join us in a minute, along with the White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and President Trump himself. 4 of the 5 people in the room on January 4th, all of them have confirmed what we know to be true, that Donald Trump did request and, as required by law, approved and authorized up to 20,000 Guard troops to be called up by Pelosi and Bowser should they need them and want them. He saw this as a potentially dangerous situation. Why wouldn't he after coming off the riots of the summer of 2020? Take a look. Did you authorize calling up the Guard, and then it became the chain of command went to Nancy Pelosi and to the mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser? Did you, as required by law, authorize that?
100%, and attested to by many people, and they turned it down. Nancy Pelosi turned it down.
Mayor Bowser's written refusal, the communications between the leader of the Capitol Police and their chain of command to the DOD refusing our request to allow National Guardsmen and women to stage on January 4 and 5 before January 6.
Did you both ask for the National Guard to be called up?
Without a doubt, Sean, we've made that very clear, not just once, but on numerous occasions. We wanted to make sure that there was plenty of National Guard on the ready in case there was some kind of violence.
I had a meeting with President Trump on the 3rd of January concerning some international threats, and at the very end, he asked if there were any requests for National Guard support.
What was the president's response to you with regard to the request made by Mayor Bowser?
Fill it and do whatever was necessary to protect the demonstrators.
Now, Kash Patel and the former acting defense secretary, Chris Miller, will join us in a second. Now, of course, none of what you just saw, I predict, will be played by the January 6th committee. They don't care about the truth. Sadly, they're not even looking for ways to better secure the Capitol and protect our elected leaders, which we must do. They're just smearing Trump again and again and again and attempting to cement their power in D.C. According to reports, we have Democrat Jamie Raskin now wants to use the January 6th committee to abolish the Electoral College. So major population centers, New York and California and New Jersey and Illinois, they can rule the country with an iron fist in perpetuity. Now, clearly, if you're actually interested in the truth about January 6th and not just using it as a political weapon, and you want to protect all elected officials, you're better off watching this program. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.